this is really an amazing privilege for us to have Barry and Vanessa have a chance to share with us for about 20, 30 minutes some of their adventures and thinking about friends worldwide, because we know parts of their ministry, but their ministry has been really huge. It's had a huge impact on Quakers all over and has benefited all of us in so many ways. So that's what they're going to do today. They're going to share some of the things they've done recently and where we're led as a meeting from their ministries, which I felt very precious about. So take it away.
So, so thanks, Chuck. And so it's really Vanessa's ministry, which not working so much, but it's still coming up there. So we'll talk. Most recently, we've been. I had the pleasure. I retired in May. And so I could finally come along with Vanessa. She's always invited me to go along with her on her travels, and I rarely got the chance to go because somebody was obsessed about work. I don't know who that was. But then, so we were able to go travel to Britain Yearly Meeting and also to the World Plenary of Friends, which was held in South Africa. And so we'll talk a little bit about that, answer any questions, just give you a very, very high level view of what we experienced. Does that sound right?
Yep, very brief.
Very brief, very brief. All right, so we can flip to the next slide. So this is this is our very brief agenda. So like, hey, come on, we're still Quakers. Britain Yearly Meeting, we'll talk a little bit about that and a governance change that we experienced them approving there, which sort of sounds, when you hear about it, will sound very familiar to you in Philadelphia Yearly Meeting. We'll also talk about a Black History tour, walking tour, which we took, which was very, very interesting. And then, so we were there in Britain, London, and then flew to South Africa for the World Plenary of Friends, which is supported by Friends World Committee for Consultation. Is anybody familiar with FWCC and their work? Yeah, this is one of my favorite stories about Quakers is we are so different. Here's another group just to try to get us to be able to talk to each other. And so that group, Friends World Committee for Consultation, facilitates communications between unprogrammed friends, between programmed friends, and between evangelical friends, and helps to create a space where all of us, all Quakers of all kinds, can be together. And so it was very exciting. So we'll move on to the next slide, which hopefully will come up. But anyway, so Britain Yearly Meeting is held this year and frequently at Friends House, which is in London, and it is it's their attempt to have Friends Center, okay? It's because it's in England, it's older and it's fancier, but
The whole block.
and a whole block. But yeah, so it's a beautiful facility. Which was renovated in 2014, and it looks quite nice. So we have a picture of it, and we can send that along. We'll send along the PowerPoint so that you can have that, and you can view it at your leisure. But it was amazing to be there with them at a friend's house where their meeting for worship with attention to business was, and to experience them doing their business. The Vanessa had prepared me well for it because Vanessa has been to Britain Yearly Meeting how many times?
I've lost count, but at least 10.
Yeah, yeah. So it's sort of like, going around saying, so I always go around with Vanessa, but it's like everybody knows her. And so they're like, oh yeah. So we know her. Yes. Oh, Vanessa, how are you? So anyway, what friends in Britain were doing was looking at their governance structure and how the yearly meeting is set up. And right now they have one session of yearly meeting, and they were changing to have 4 sessions of yearly meeting during a year, continuing sessions of yearly meeting, which is a very different thing than they have been doing.
Yeah, in between their yearly meetings, they had what was called Meeting for Sufferings, that they had representatives from the different, they have area meetings, which for me, I kind of equate the area meeting to our quarterly meetings. And so they have representatives that come and participate in the Meeting for Suffering, which actually originally was established to record Quakers who were suffering because from their ministries, for being put in prison and things like that. So, but it transitioned, because that was not happening as much, to then becoming more of a governing body.
Yes, and so it was only in the last 50 years that they've resurrected that recording of friends who are experiencing doing a witness for their faith, and tracking them and recording on them and reporting about them. So that's recently reconstituted the Meeting for Sufferings from its original purpose, but it's also then had that, because it was the interim governance tool. They still use it for that. So they're really working on a way to keep the term Meeting for Sufferings, which has a lot of deep resonance for friends, but still move to this new model. But one of the other things that we did there when we were at friend's house at the yearly meeting was thank you. Some friends told us about this Black History walking tour that we could do in London, and they set it up for part of the yearly meeting, and so it was quite wonderful to do. We said oh, let's do that, and so we start and we walk with the guide, who is a wonderful guy, nice guy, and he starts telling us all about various sites, various buildings and structures, and what happened there related to Black history and people in Britain. Right? So
he was mentioning people. He would show a picture and say, well, who is this? And so Barry and I would say who it was. Like, oh, okay. And then he pulled out an FGC book, and that he used to be able to get some of the history. And
it was Blackfire.
Yeah,
was the first one.
And I was like, oh, I know that book.
Yeah.
And I know the authors. And he's like, well, I was like, oh, I got excited when he pulled it out, and he looked at me and he's like, did you write this book? And I was like, no, but I know the authors, and this is a great book. And so then we went on a little bit further, and then he pulled out another book, which was Catherine Gerbner's book around Christian slavery. And I got excited again. And he's like, oh, did you write this? Like, no, but I know the person. So we walk a little further, and then he pulls out Fit for Freedom. And then Barry goes, she did write that. He was like, really? He looked at my name tag and he's like, yeah, really. So he was very nice. He actually had written his own book about the Black History walks that he gives, and so it's part of it is out. So the other picture that you don't see is a picture of Tony and I, and Tony holding up my book, which I asked. I said, "Would you like me to autograph the book?" And he's like, "Yes." So I signed the book for him. So, but when you get a copy of the PowerPoint, you'll be able to see that. So what you also missed is picture of Barry and I standing up, friend's house, and Barry and I standing in front of it, and then a picture of the interior of friend's house, which is huge, and a picture of the clerk's table at friend's house, and then they also have a climate witness. So for Saturday and Sunday of the yearly meeting, when we entered in the morning, they had folks sitting there with signs around climate justice. So that you'll also see a picture of that as well.
So, after Britain yearly meeting, we flew to South Africa. And we were fortunate enough to be in Johannesburg for a couple of days before the World Plenary. And this is the theme of the World Plenary: living the spirit of Ubuntu, responding with hope to God's call to cherish creation and one another. And that's a picture of us there, and also some screens, Zoom screens there that for some of the people who were attending. There was part of we were split sort of into 3 different groups that to share about our ministry, about Ubuntu, how we feel that relates to our faith, about healing and repair of relationship in light of historic and ongoing injustice, and care for creation, which was really the environmental witness. So, and so the 3 different groups worked on all of that, weaving it into Ubuntu and how our faith relates to these different threads. It was quite fascinating. Who here has an idea about what Ubuntu is?
I was going to ask you.
Okay, all right, and it's not in the Linux operating system. Well, but I'm sorry. Yes, it is a Linux operating system, but Ubuntu is it's a African tradition, and it is one way is it says I am because we are, and that we are related to each other, and that we are not who we are without each other. Ubuntu is something I'm feeling powerfully right this moment. And so, and it was an opportunity there to be with Quakers from around the world, and who were able to communicate with translators, and because there's different languages and there's different theology, but it was an opportunity for us to share and worship together about these things. And so, yeah. Go ahead, sweetie.
Next slide.
Next slide.
The pictures aren't there.
Okay. Okay, sorry. So it was held at this place, Vanderbilt Park, which is near Johannesburg, South Africa. That weird spelling, of course, because of the Dutch settlers who were in that area. This is the area where, in that country, where they were mainly. It's an interesting story. It's an industrial city. A couple of steel mills very critical to that area. It's around 95,000 people there. But we were at a nice resort hotel where we met was quite nice. There were people from any guessed about how many yearly meetings were in present there?
150.
Warm, come down a little bit.
40.
95.
Wow.
People from 95 yearly meetings present there.
Wow.
And of course, fortunately, because it was in Africa, many of the largest population of Quakers, which is in Africa, was able to come and be present.
Oh, wow.
Frequently, when these world gatherings are held, there are huge problems with getting friends into whatever country where the gathering is held because of visa issues and people being restricted from moving across borders.
And there was actually some of that, because there were many African friends, but a lot of the Latin American friends were not able to get visas to be present in person.
Oh.
So several of them had to participate via Zoom. So, which was surprising.
Yes, yes. So it was, but there were about 250 of us
In person.
in person and maybe more online.
Well, they said there were in the
In the epistle,
it says 500. So
right?
that includes online and in person.
They also had hubs around the world where people would gather and in a meeting house or in some,
Or here, Pendle Hill.
Pendle Hill.
Was a hub.
there was a hub, and so there would be a Zoom screen on there, which was Pendle Hill, and you know, you could see that there would be 3 or 4 people who would gather there to be present with. There was translation
And interpretation.
and interpretation in Spanish, Swahili, and English.
French also.
And French. And so, so here you are, you think our meeting for business here, hybrid is a little bit. So not only there's people in the room, there's people on Zoom, and they're in 4 different languages as well. So it's
It's
got,
consecutive translation. So they were constantly, they had a sign they could hold up that said, slow down,
Oh.
or also pause. Because whatever language people were speaking in very quickly for people to be able to interpret. So, and you know, people didn't think about it. Sometimes someone who would be near them at the podium would have to poke the person and go, because that person, you know, is looking at what they're doing or not looking at the direction of the booth.
yeah,
So
yeah.
they didn't see that they were needing to slow down because they were talking too fast.
And some people like that fast talk in a quicker meeting setting so that people aren't bored, but and so like the people who had that faster rhythm, it was horrible for them. They really like tapped every 2 minutes. And so so there was actually some conversation about that fact.
So there were long days, which always started every morning at 8:30 with home groups. We had, you know, 200 people, and they also had home groups not only there in South Africa, but also for people who were online. There were home groups also. So actually, that's a photo of our home group during the one day that we were assigned to be in the restaurant where they were serving meals, and breakfast was never finished by 8:30. And so that didn't work out. So what we ended up doing was trying a spot in the lobby, and it was too much background noise. So the person said, well, let's try meeting outside. Well, it's winter in South Africa. And starting in the morning in the 30s. So after we had that one day outside, and several folks, especially Kenyans, saying, if we do this again tomorrow, I'm not coming back. I was able to find a room where we were able to meet inside and actually turn the heat on. And not be frozen, but you see that there's the river that is behind us there. And it was an historic area.
Yes, it is a historic area. That's the Ball River is the, I think, the Afrikaans name. There's several different names for it from the Zulu.
They're actually in the epistle.
They're in the epistle. So you can see what those different names are for that river, but it's about where we were at this hotel. It's about 5 miles from Sharpeville, where the Sharpeville massacre occurred in 1976, I believe. And so it is deep in South Africa. But we were all on the campus of this hotel for the gathering. I was not in Vanessa's work home group, so we were so my home group met in the room called the wine cellar. So also not really toasty. Really not. So it was unfortunate that, well, we got eventually moved to another room as well because it was just freezing. People just like wouldn't come back.
The home groups were important, and I got to facilitate it with 2 other women of color. Kins, I don't know, some of you may remember Kins. So Kins came and gave a presentation on the peace teams last year at our meeting. So it was wonderful to see Kins again and to be able to spend time with Kins. And then another young lady from Kenya. So the 3 of us facilitated our home group together. And Kins asked me to bring her hello to those of you who remember Kins. And I think.
Yes, there's a photo of Vanessa and Kim's.
For those of you, when you the name may not, sometimes for me, names don't do it, but when I see the picture of the person, then I remember them. So, next.
That's all that shows up.
That's all
Okay,
that shows up,
okay.
okay. So,
Right, no new.
so as a part of the plenary, we also had section meetings. So that we are part of the section of the Americas. So their FWCC has the section of the Americas, they have the Asia West Pacific section, they have the Africa section and Europe Middle East section. And all of those, we had times where all of those were meeting at the same time. And so in our section meeting, it was good to meet the new executive secretary of the section of the America. And he had just started, is it 6 weeks?
Yes, 3 weeks. 3 weeks.
3 weeks. So first name's Evan and
Welkin, Evan Welkin. And friends may know that Robin Moore was the executive secretary of the section of the Americas until last month. And she's just left, and Evan is just starting. So 3 weeks in, he was there, and so he was swimming a lot in the deep end. But nice man.
yes, it was nice to meet him. He's actually not going to be here in Philadelphia, that he's going to work from Washington State, where he is, but they're going to keep the office here in Philadelphia. So, and have staff still here in Philadelphia.
So front center. All right, sorry.
And there will be a annual meeting of the section of the Americas in March.
March of next year, March 20th to 23rd, I believe.
Where?
But again, it's in the
It's in Arizona, in,
Phoenix.
no, it's
No.
one of the little places
Yeah.
near Phoenix.
Yes,
Scottsdale. Yes, I think it's Scottsdale.
yes, I think you're right. Yeah. All right, a winner.
But you're welcome to go to their website, the FWCC section of the Americas, and they do have it posted up there as well. We had it posted on the slide, but
Yes,
it's
yeah.
not coming up,
yeah.
so.
So in addition to meeting sometimes as a section of the Americas, Africa section, Middle East, Europe, Asia, West Pacific, then we also met in these 3 different threads, one about Ubuntu, one about healing and relationships from historic injustices and continuing injustice, and one about care for creation. And so from those sessions, we would share and work. And then there was weaving sessions where friends would share about their reactions and relations and discernment and worship about these topics into a document. Again, that document is posted on the website.
Will be. It's not there yet.
It is.
It is?
It is. I
Oh,
found
okay.
it. I
Okay,
found it
great.
last night or
Great.
this morning.
Great, great.
But anyway, it's posted on the website and we have a link to that in the seemingly invisible PowerPoint that you'll get a copy of. But it is available and it's fascinating. It's in Afrikaans. It's in Afrikaans, it's in Xhosa, it's in Spanish, and it's in English. And it talks about actually FWCC wishing to set up a small group to help facilitate continuing discussions about healing those relationships from continuing injustice and historic and continuing injustice. And some people might be on that. You might know. And so it's it's quite interesting because we totally are operating in FWCC space in a continuation of a colonial relationship.
Mhm.
And so in which decisions about an FWCC are made in the United States and in London, and the work and the body really is in Africa
The
and
majority
Latin
of
America.
The majority of Quakers in the world
Right.
are in
Or
Africa
Africa.
and Latin America.
Yeah.
But, it's a capitalist system. We have the money and we
And
make the decisions. So it was interesting having those conversations and being a part of those conversations and facilitating conversations. One of the things I didn't say about when we were in London is that there's a person, Edwina Pert, who has kind of a counterpart position with Britain yearly meeting that I do with FGC, and we've had a relationship over several years. And so we actually did an interview together there in Britain, which will be posted at some point, and we'll share that when that's posted. And she also came to the plenary. And so she and I facilitated a workshop there at the plenary together. And then we're also a part of the thread group with Nzizwe.
I forget her last name, but Rutledge is tacked on with a
Yes.
hyphen.
Yeah. So who was the head, she originally was a part of the new South African government and then was working for CUNO Geneva. And so that she and Hal Weaver have been doing some work together. And so that's a part of how the thread came. And so we did start a group that is reaching out to FWCC saying that we want to continue to work on the thread around historic and current injustices. So.
Also there at the gathering was a crew from Pacific Yearly Meeting who was doing a film about the gathering, about the plenary. And so they were there with us all the time. On the campus and in various different groups, and we also were interviewed. Vanessa and I were interviewed, as well as many other friends, to share about what the plenary means and how we were relating with it.
Yes, and when that documentary is out, we'll let you know about that as well.
Okay, one of the other things is that happened there is our friend Aisha Imani from and Phil Lord from Ujima Friends meeting were there as well for the World Plenary, and they gave a workshop about Ujima. And so it was, you know, again, it was amazing the way the different threads came together. And so it was really nice to have them present with us. It felt like we were home. And so it was, and also we were there, Sarah Coates, Saturday from Cuno.
Oh, yeah, I'm playing last name.
Oh, right. So the woman who's the head of
New York.
Cuno, New York, and who actually lives on our block, but or she's in the next block, but she was also there.
Yes.
Oh yes, and Joyce Aljourny,
Yeah.
name I'm just
AFSC.
manipulated from poorly manipulated from AFSC, as well as Bruce, the young man who's the outreach, Quaker outreach
Yeah.
from AFSC. So a couple of folks from AFSC, the Africa section lead was there as well from AFSC. Representatives from Canadian Friends Service Committee were also present, as well as the woman who is the executive director of FCNL. And so there were a number of Quaker service agencies which were present there at the World Plenary. So
the final thing that we want to leave you with is that for me, for the fourth time, I got to celebrate George Fox's birthday.
Wow.
I did it for 400. So we celebrated at FGC this summer, celebrated at Pacific Yearly Meeting, which I attended this summer, and then at Britain. There's actually a picture of the cupcakes and the cake from Britain Yearly Meeting, and then they had a tiny cake that was like this big.
Like way smaller than the cake we just
In South Africa
Right.
celebrated, which I've never seen a cake slice so thin in my life. So, but that one was not gluten.
So that was what we've been doing just recently in our travels with friends. It's amazing to be present with friends and to learn more about friends and how we are worshiping and acting in the world today in various places. So
Yeah, this was his first time being at Britain Yearly Meeting and also at FWCC event, but I really love being at FWCC events because it just brings together the whole world of Quakerism and not just one or two branches. And it is so wonderful to be in a space where people are speaking different languages, people are, and we're having discussions about what we feel about God and about creation and racism. And we don't have time to talk about it, but we did get a chance while we were in London to go to an exhibit that was at the British Library that was celebrating 500 years of African,
Black
British music.
Wow.
And being there and seeing the commonalities of racism and white supremacy there in Britain in relationship to music, but you know, there. And then we went to the Apartheid Museum when we were in South Africa, and of course, you know, white supremacy and racism there. And just the parallels between our three countries around that. It was just so powerful for me.
Yeah.
And it reinforced the importance of the work that I've been doing. So that's it.
Thank you.
Go to both Britain Yearly Meetings website and also FWCC plenary website, because there's so much more there. We just don't have time to tell you about.
All right, Steve, I see your hand, and I also see Carol's hand
And share.
and Seamus's hand.
Sorry if I missed this, but many times when you do these kind of trips, Vanessa, you meet people from Quakers United in publishing or
Yes.
something. Did you this time?
So, they did not meet, so I did not get to meet the group, but they did have a table at Britain Yearly Meeting. And I got to meet my former co-clerk, who was there tabling the table, staffing the table for the event. And so I did get a chance to have a picture with Jennifer, and it was nice to see her. And Gabe was also there, and flew
Yes.
back with us.
Yes, yes.
So there were some people who were there,
Gabe
but
Erie
the
from
Quakers
Princeton.
Uniting and Publishing did not meet in itself.
Seamus.
I'm really so glad to listen to this presentation and to know that the two of your sense of leadership will now be one, so that when you go about doing this, your influence might grow a little bit more and spread the word a little bit more. I'm really enjoying that the two of you are going to be going off to continue to do Quaker work worldwide. That's a really beautiful feeling I'm feeling right now. And I have.
They like each other.
I hope we can hear some of these stories that how your leadership is working. I just had one little question, and I don't know if I'm confused or not, but early on in your presentation, you had a phrase called tapestry reparation, and I don't know what that means. Can you elaborate a little bit more?
Sure. So that historic and ongoing injustice, one of the elements of that is to sort of, recognize, repent, repair, and there's another R there,
Yeah,
but
it's in the-
it's in the thing. But
Wait.
reparations is part of what that was all about. And so in fact, in Britain Yearly Meeting, there's a group that's looking at specific Quakers who are members of Britain Yearly Meeting who participated in the slave trade and identifying, there's like 14 families, and they're going through family histories, identifying those families, identifying the activities that they did in the slave trade, and looking at what ways that the yearly meeting is called to respond to this information. Because it's not, it was not as corporate. They really could see that there were individual members of the community who were involved in this. So they're in this phase of doing research into that, and then to sort of look at what actions they're called to do
In community.
in community.
They're not going to decide by themselves. They're going to reach out to the communities that have been affected by that and say, okay, we acknowledge our role in this. What would you like to see as reparations for this?
I'm so glad you explained that, because I thought that some people had stolen some tapestries and then.
Well, people have.
Yeah.
We were the Black History Tour.
Right.
Tony was like, yeah, that's the British Museum over there.
Yes.
It's a place, a house of stolen goods.
Yes,
Right.
it
So-
is.
Hey.
There's a part of information.
So we have to end, really.
Carol's had her hand
I'm
up.
gonna say that we wanted to leave a little space for people online
Yes.
to say anything that they'd like to. You weren't able to be part of the kind of appreciations of Barry and Vanessa that we did in the main Sharing Street room. So Carol,
It's up to
have
you.
at it.
You
have
need
to
to
unmute
unmute
it,
Carol.
Muted.
That was exactly my agenda, having not had a chance to just tell Vanessa and Barry how much they've meant to me personally in my journey through this meeting. Just to be, and I know you all know what I mean when I say just to be able to walk in and glance around and see you there has been a lifeline for me. But also listening to this PowerPoint just gives me a sense of an intellectual, spiritually leavened kind of thought that you added into our meeting that we're gonna lose in some sense.
Yes.
And maybe we'll be the place that you visit for your holidays now, but I want you to
Won't
know
be in
that
the winter.
exactly.
More the summer.
But in the winter, you might get snow back.
So,
Exactly, Kate, what you love.
so, I know that Berta and Sarah both had a chance at the end of our meeting here to say something. But if you want to say something briefly, Berta and Sarah too,
Is
then we have to
Carl done?
close up here. Berta? You have to unmute.
What I remember in the beginning of my attending meeting was Vanessa's asking us to hold her in the light when Green Circle was laid down. That was in the portion of meeting for business that was called News of Ourselves and Others. And Barry somehow sat behind me and Mona in worship in our typical places, even when our typical places moved in the meeting room. And I always felt that they held my back. And I was on that committee on race and racism with Larry and Kitsy and Mona. And I remember my clearness committee for joining the meeting. There was an elder person who was on my clearness committee who asked maybe why I didn't join the gay synagogue in Philadelphia. And Arlene sort of supported my getting through that. And then that same elder really objected to Vanessa's wording in her ministry of welcoming people of color because she felt it was going back to Jim Crow days and she didn't want to go backwards. I just felt so much that you grew me as a human being and a friend, and my ministry was very interrelated to the gifts you brought. And I just needed to thank you.
Thank you, Berta.
Thank you, Berta.
Thank you.
Sarah, if you have something to say, make it short.
I wanted to say quickly that my memories of Vanessa are also interlaced with my memories of working for Friends World Committee. And so that's also a lovely part of what you've given me. And I was grateful also to be able to be on a committee with Barry for even though it was for a short time. So thanks both for everything you've brought us.
Thanks, Sarah. I enjoyed working with you at FWCC.
So I think for the building, we have to close up now, but maybe we could all rise for just a minute, if you can rise, and just hold our dear friends in the light as they go on their next journey together.
May the long time sunshine upon you, all love surround you, and the clear light within you guide your way on. May the long time sunshine upon you, all love surround you, and the clear light within you guide your way on.
Thank you. And
Thank you, everyone.
thank you so much.
We love you.
We love you, yeah.
You too.
Unless you were ready. I'm not leaving.
Huh?